Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining in on the Freightwala and FICCI co-hosted webinar titled Preparing Your EXIM Operations for the Aftermath of the COVID-19 Lockdown. For those of you who don't know us at Freightwala, I just want to introduce myself and the company. I'm the CEO of Freightwala, which is India's leading technology. We use technology extensively to digitize the freight forwarding process and hence create a lot of efficiency and value for our clients, especially in this age of work from home operations. As regards to FICCI, as you may already know, FICCI is India's largest and oldest apex business organization, and they take a very active part in advocating policy change for the betterment of Indian business. Both FICCI and Freightwala are delighted to host this webinar to improve this spread of knowledge and best practices in these challenging times. I'm going to take a few seconds to just explain the house rules. The format of today's discussion will be one round of panelist insights, which should last around 30 minutes, followed by a Q&A from the wider audience. If as a participant you do have a question, please message it into the Q&A section of Zoom, which should be at the bottom of the panel. The recording of this webinar will be made available on Freightwala's YouTube channel as well as other social media platforms. To get started, I think we are all well aware of the situation in the country. We are now into the second phase of the lockdown, and the situation has evolved considerably since the lockdown was first put in place. In the past 2 weeks, we have seen the government announce that they are allowing the movement of both essential and non-essential cargo. They have also drastically improved the ability of essential services companies to operate. And now we are on the cusp of further lifting of restrictions. We are here today to discuss how EXIM operations are likely to develop from here on in the context of this current situation. So through this webinar, we will try to maintain a focus on the best practices for inventory and logistics management, and also get an understanding of this contentious force majeure concept with some practical advice on how to move forward. Our panelists today include Mr. Bal Malkit Singh, past president of AIMTC and a partner at Bal Road Lines. Captain Deepak Tiwari, chairman of Container Shipping Lines Association of India and the country MD of MSC. Mr. O.P. Hisaria, who is senior vice president at Reliance Industries. And Mr. Nishant Shah, who is partner at Economic Law Practice, which is one of India's premier law firms. So jumping straight in, Mr. Bal Singh, first question to you. The government has relaxed the rules for the movement of migrant laborers in the last few days. In this context, has the driver shortage started reducing? What are the continuing challenges that are being faced by the transport industry, and how soon do you expect transport services to normalize?
First of all, thank you very much to Freightwala and FICCI for inviting me to put my views on your webinar. As you all know that the road transport sector is the most important sector in the entire supply chain. If our wheels moves, the economy will move. If the wheels move in a faster way, the economy will move in a faster way. But now it is standstill. And before I going to answer your question, we would like to put the 20 crore of people of this country are directly or indirectly associated with this road transport sector. And highest taxpayer, and the second in terms of the generation of the employment next to the agriculture, about 65% is the freight still on the roads and 90% on the passenger. The effect of the lockdown has been very devastated the industry. We have been losing 2,200 crore per day. As you put forward that there has been a lot of relaxation is been given since the start of the lockdown on the 24th of March. Lakhs of vehicles were stranded all across the highways, all the state highways. The drivers were left high and dry, where to go, where to park the vehicle, and what were the safer hideouts. They were without food, water, basic amenities, and most of the driver had left at that point itself. keeping behind the standard vehicle. And some of them we have advised to go to the safer dhabas, safer warehouse. So they were able to reach to that places where the basic amenities were available to them. Still, as on today, I can say that, as you know, that all the manufacturing units are closed, warehouses are closed, godowns are closed, manpower is not able to move. 3.5 lakhs vehicles are still stranded with the loaded loads approximately valuing around 3,500 crores. So lot of relax we have pursuing the matter with the our nodal ministry, Ministry of Road Transport Highways, then Ministry of Home. We have the video conferencing with Minister of State Transport VK Singh in entire secretary, joint secretary were present. We have put forward our difficulties, operational difficulties and challenges we were facing. And accordingly, on 29th of the March, some relaxation were given by the government that you can move essential, non-essential commodities. But the competent officers are not available at the ground level. The advisory given by the government is not been implemented. It is true letter and spirit on the ground level. Even the essential commodities, like I can quote you that the material which is raw material which is required for manufacturing of the clothing which is provided to the hospital for mask and for the protective gears were also stopped on the checkpost. And still now the clear guidelines yesterday has come that no vehicle will be stopped all across the country. Now coming directly to answering directly to your question, that what is the availability of the drivers and what operations are we are doing in spite of all the relaxations. Even the manufacturing unit has been given the relaxation, but it is lot of riders are there. As you know that labors are not available, and the government have initiated the process of sending the migrant labor to their native places. The process has been started. Whereas the drivers on their own had left to the native places, the means of transportation available to them, that is by joining the vehicle which were moving to that destination, because three people are allowed, and the rest of the drivers are also under very fear. And since they don't have any mode of transportation, what we feel that as the thing normalizes, the first thing they will be moving ahead to their native places. Because under these circumstances, it is very difficult to work for them. जैसे मैं कई बार कह चुका हूँ कि वो जान हथेली पे लेके he is risking his life for moving the essential commodity from one part of the country to the another part of the country. But no recognition has been given to them. We have suggested the government that they should be provided the insurance cover, that the fear factor amongst the driver fraternity should be removed, and some confidence building measures should be adopted on the national highway, on the state highways. We have been told that it is under consideration, as they have given to the paramedical staff, doctor, nurses, etc., etc. They should be also given some insurance cover. And as you see that we read in the media, electronic media, print media, when the stranded vehicle has been moved from stranded migrants, worker, tourists, pilgrims are moved, they are done the proper thermal screening, medical checkup has been done of each of them, and sanitization of the vehicle is done. What security we have? We have suggested every 200 kilometer, you should make the setup that sanitization of the vehicle should be done there. Driver should be thermal screened. He should be asked about his health. If you find any abnormality, medical advice should be given to him. If it is uncontrollable, he should be admitted to the hospital, because as a responsible citizen, as a responsible association also, it is we are duty bound that this virus should not spread from one part of the country to the another part of the country. Then we have the next video conferencing with Mr. VK Singh, Petroleum Minister, and Coal and Mine Minister Prahlad Joshi, and CMD of IOC, HPCL, BPCL, Marketing Director, Coal India, MD, CMD was there, in which we suggested to them, already you have in place the entire infrastructure. 6,800 retail outlet are there. You have the refineries, you have the loading point, you have the gas agencies. Let not start the process, because it is a long battle we are facing against the virus. It is not a short term measure we have to take. And there should be a confidence building measure among the citizen also, that the fear factor is removed. They should at least move out, and whatever the directive given by the government, using of the mask, hand sanitization, and sanitization of the vehicle should be provided to them, because the industry is overburdened. Industry will be not able to bear the cost. It should be the gesture from the government. If the government is spending 2 lakh crore to fight against this virus, why not 200 crore for this industry, for the driver, which are the main component of the entire supply chain management? And yesterday also we have the meeting with our transport minister Satej Banti Patil along with the transport commissioner. We have suggested that at least you start this facility on the checkpost. There are 22 to 23 checkposts of the Maharashtra in which the vehicles are entering. Why not you provide the sanitizing facility there? You do some medical health checkup to them, and you provide us the helpline number. So they should be feel that the en route harassment should not be there. There should be helpline number which should be, if they feel any problem, they should be directly called to the helpline, that immediately resolution could be done. And as only 8 to 10% vehicle are moving at a time, and 90% vehicle are still idle because there is no activity, there is no manufacturing unit are working, import export transportation is there, but that is also very limited from the port to the CFS only. Interstate movement is not there. Manufacturer are not ready to pay the custom duty because they are not able to manufacture the goods, and there is no orders are there for them. So we are heading for a very challenging time ahead, and think will if the things start normalizing, it will take much time. Overnight the miracle will not happen. First, or within a week's time, if the things are normalized, there is the moment of the people. If you are able to go to the office, labor are allowed to go to their godowns, warehouse, manufacturing units start working. The normalize in the first will be around to 15 to 20%, and in a month time they will be able to reach to 30 to 35%. And it will take some months, and there will be a lot of challenges, because the working capital will be a lot of challenges for us, because already we are on the verge of the bankruptcy, because all the payment, the business we have done is with our customer. How they will support us, how they will pay us, because our operational cost is around 75% in way of the diesel, which is 60%, and 15 to 18% is the toll expenses, and which we have to pay upfront. And now I feel that most of the fleet owner, transport operator may be short of their funds. They are using their capital to pay out the salaries to their staff, to the drivers, and other overheads they are having. So it is very challenging time ahead, and bringing back the driver from the native place itself is a very daunting task. How, whether their family members will allow, how they will be able to come. So when the life is going to change after COVID-19 also, social distancing, sanitization, awareness. So these all measures will be adopting also, and we have also suggested that the consignee should sanitize the vehicle, should provide all the do and do nots to the driver at the point of the loading, unloading. And we need a government support also, the industry support also, that at least the seamless moment is some way started. Back to you, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Bal Singh. That was very, very sobering knowledge that about how bad the situation really is. My next question is for Captain Deepak Tiwari. Captain, seeing as there are so many multiple blank sailings that are happening with the shipping lines, assuming that the import congestion problem starts improving, by when do you expect the situation to normalize? So that is the first part of my question. And second part is, what new initiatives do you foresee the shipping lines undertaking for avoiding the transfer of physical documents in the future?
Okay, thank you very much. Very good afternoon to everyone. And thank you, Freightwala, as well as Vicky, to invite me here and as a panelist. Let me just put things in perspective. We have a situation which is global. We have a situation which we've never seen before. Probably the last time the world witnessed something like this was a century before this. And a century is about 4 generations, and in 4 generations, people have not even remembered what actually transpired then. And this has really hit everybody with a very, very hard hammer. As far as the shipping lines are concerned, we are challenged by the sudden drop of cargoes and sudden drop of cargo movement between countries, between ports, between continents. And this has had a very, very adverse effect on the situation as far as shipping lines are concerned. The current losses that shipping lines are expected to make just in the first half of this year is estimated to be in the region of around $60 to $70 billion. This is just globally. As far as India is concerned, and I'm talking mainly of the container cargoes. There have been 47 blank sailings from the 22nd of March till today, which means that 47 ships have not called at the Indian port. The other ships which are calling at Indian ports, trying to provide a service, are coming in with imports, because globally, nobody has had a shutdown like what India has had. I mean, and it's not been so complete like a curfew. In a few places, yes, in China, a few places in Italy and other parts, there was a similar curfew, but not as a nation. Not as a lockdown, as we call it, as a nation, and a lockdown to the severity of practically a curfew. So as far as India is concerned, our ships are coming in with imports. There are no exports. The drop in exports has been practically over 90% by volume. And this is all of a sudden. Huh? I mean, you create a lockdown, you announce it, you enforce it, and bang, your exports go. So our ships have been sailing empty, and therefore we were forced to, because you make a cash loss if you actually go through a voyage. So we had to blank off these sailings. The blanking of sailings will continue. It's not that this is the last. These blanking of sailings will continue. There have been some services which have been blanked off. So it's not only, say, one sailing for 1 week for a particular sector has been blanked off. An entire service has been blanked. So we're going through a bit of a bad patch over here. So this is the current scenario. What is the light at the end of the tunnel is what we see are 2 things. The imports that were coming in were not being cleared. So in the first phase of the lockdown, only 10% of those imports were cleared. The rest were just lying either in the ports or in the CFSs or in the ICDs, because the rail movement is continuing. Road movement has been hampered very, very severely, but the rail movement has been continuing. So what has happened is that these import cargoes have actually disseminated to the ICDs, they've disseminated to the CFSs, and they are creating congestions over there because the last mile trucking is not available to the factory. So is not available to the factories. So under those circumstances, there was congestion. And this congestion started to be felt. Even in large ports like Nhava Sheva, JNPT, we've had a situation where the terminals got congested. The terminals then moved the containers to an ICD, which is in Mulund, and these containers were moved by rail and by road to that particular ICD. That ICD is getting congested, so they're going to move it to another ICD. The CFSs are congested because the imports are just lying there. Nobody's taking delivery. So that was as far as the first lockdown is concerned. Second lockdown, what we've seen is from last week and this week, we've seen that the import clearances of containers has jumped. It's gone up to nearly about 50%. So this is, to us, a light at the end of the tunnel. So if imports start getting cleared slowly, two things will happen. Number one, there is decongestion. Number two, the shipping lines get back empty containers, which can be then readied for the exports. During the course of last week and this week, we have seen a certain amount of export cargoes, container cargoes, starting to arrive for shipment. And this is a good sign. We also find that empty equipment is the pickups from the empty depots have started for utilizing these empties for exports. So this is, this is the scenario currently, and this is how we are dealing with it as we speak. It's a question of no long-term planning. It's a question of very, very short-term planning, where we say that, okay, wait and watch, see how the situation develops, and then move ahead. But we have our assets on the water, we have the ships on water, and we have to watch every day as it develops. Coming back to the second part of your question, the second question, this entire experience has taught us two things. Number one, the shipping industry specifically, and the entire supply chain and logistics industry will have to go digital, will have to go electronic. The more we get things digital, the better it is for everybody, both for the service providers as well as for the supply chain and the exporters, importers, wherever they are, both in India as well as outside India. So what the shipping lines have gone and done is that we approached the government of India and we requested them to give some instructions to the Indian banks to accept electronic bills of lading. So these electronic bills of lading, we have the capability whereby through blockchain and other advanced technology, I'm not a technical guy, so I can't speak too much about it, but through advanced technology, through secure technology, a bill of lading moves from the shipping line to the exporter. From the exporter, with all his documents that are required to move through the banking channel, it hits the bank. From the bank, it clears, goes to the corresponding bank at the other end, and that same bills of lading are given to the consignee and to the shipping line to give the delivery of the cargo. The technology is available. We've done the tests, and we requested the government of India, and they've accepted that request, of course. It's logical. And we hope that the Indian Banks Association as well as the Indian banks actually adopt the electronic bills of lading. Once that happens, we actually go digital. As far as the customs are concerned, they have been very, very helpful. The customs have facilitated electronic interface, digital interface, so much so that even as far as ship clearances are concerned, they have accepted electronic ship clearances. And this is a very, very big step ahead. And let me tell you, this is a new normal. Going ahead, in COVID or no COVID. This is going to be the new normal. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. A lot of useful insights over there. I want to now slightly change tack and ask Mr. Hisaria from Reliance. From an importer-exporter's point of view, can you share what you think are the best practices for inventory management in both the lockdown as well as post-lockdown India? So what are the challenges expected in this scenario? And more importantly, what suggested solutions do you have for the rethinking and re-optimization of supply chains?
Thank you, Ficky. Thank you, Freightwala. Good afternoon, everybody. This is a kind of, we are all groping in dark about so far as inventory management practices during COVID period is concerned. This is first time after the end of Second World War that we are seeing a crisis of such proportions, where you are not sure where the next truck or the ship is going to move or not going to move, where your factory is going to operate or not going to operate, whether in a factory of 20,000, where 20,000 people are working, if 2 are found to be positive, where there would be a lockdown, so it's a lot of uncertainty. The inventory management practices led by especially the Japanese, which reduced the cost of inventory management post Second World War. Those practices evolved during the times of certainty. You were sure almost 100% okay, this ship, this plane, this truck is going to arrive my place. This ship is going to leave at this particular time and arrive at another particular time to a different place. And based on those supply chain certainties, the inventory management practices, a lot of them were adapted and adopted by the industry. In these times, some years back, I went for a boot camp, and the captain who was handling us, 20 of us colleagues, he said, in such times of crisis, or when we are on field, when there is no certainty of supply chain, then what do? The instructions are to our Jawans, that was his words, that eat when you get the food, sleep when you get the time. So there is no question of feeling hunger. There is no question of feeling sleepy. So you just store. You store food in your body. You store sleep with yourself. So at the moment, as we move along, all our 10, 12 manufacturing locations, there simply no practices are being followed except that to ensure enough inventory to run the plant. Similarly, one goes back, the kind of inventory management practices which will come into play. Say we have a base in Siachen. Army has a base in Siachen where people are stationed. So what kind of inventory management practices Siachen base follows? Perhaps they will need to be studied. We had this Lahaul Spiti district in Himachal. I also come from administrative service, so I have some background of there. So the district magistrate of Lahaul and Spiti had to manage inventory for the whole of district. Food and medicines and those kind of things for 6 months of a year, because it will be cut off. The passes would be closed. So the uncertainty which this crisis has exposed us, it will be before some time that industries go back to those fancy inventory management practices. The cost of carrying inventory is going to increase. The working capital requirements are going to increase for certain or near certain inventory management practice. So the world, especially in inventory management, has changed forever. We are not going to see such fancy chains just in time kind of inventory management. And this will also simplify the supply chains. The globalization, especially led by China, I mean manufacturing in China and the nearby Southeast Asian countries, a single component moves, crosses border more than once. For what it first processing is done in Thailand, second one in Taiwan, and finally it comes to China for getting placed in a machine. So those kind of fancy supply chains would definitely become unviable because of these inventory costs, these are because of these uncertainties. So inventory management is one area that I feel would change forever. During these difficult times, we are somehow managing. The JIT, recently some of our colleagues said, JIT, that was old, just in time, has become somehow in time. And I leave it to you to get the acronym of somehow in time. So that is how the inventory management practices today are. Thank you. Thank you, Sanjay.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Hesaria. I think, yeah, I agree that, perhaps there's not enough clarity right now on how the best mode of re-optimization for supply chains can happen, but it is very useful to get your insights. Thank you very much. Um, now I'll move on to, again, a slightly different topic, which is definitely one of the hot topics of the times. Mr. Nishan Shah from ELP, I'll ask you, there is this force majeure concept which everyone is talking about right now. So can you help us understand how it is being used or abused in the current scenario, and how companies can protect their businesses against, inadvertent losses because of this as we go forward?
Yeah, Sanjay. Thank you. Thank you to FICCI and Freightwala for inviting us and offering us to speak at this webinar. First of all, let me hope that all our participants and panelists are safe and staying safe and secure. Sanjay, I think the issue that you've raised is, and rightly raised it as the hottest topic right now, because we are having a number of webinars running on force majeure and people are wanting to understand what exactly force majeure is, what is the extent of this force majeure, or rather, to put it the other way around, what is the limitation of the force majeure? Because, both play equally a significant role, and it becomes very critical to understand that in what scenario should I really, for lack of a better word, press the accelerator pedal to use the force majeure and when I should not use the force majeure. So first of all, let me just explain that force majeure is a contractual provision specifically agreed by the parties as mentioned in the contract. So force majeure, the term is a French expression, and loosely it means act of God. And therefore, you have this clause in most of the contracts, which is a force majeure clause, which is typically a very wide clause, which says including but not limited to, inter alia includes, such as, and then it has various situations which are typically act of God. So, floods, famine, etc., earthquake, various things. Certain force majeures may have the terminology or the term epidemic or a pandemic. Not all have them. Depending on how the force majeure term has been worded and explained, it becomes very important whether you can bring it into play in that contractual relationship or you can't. So it becomes a very important point to understand how effectively a force majeure clause has been drafted. But before we go into how effectively it has been drafted, it's important to understand that not every agreement has a force majeure clause. First of all, let me be very clear that, I have in my career, in my all of these agreements that we've gone through, I've seen that the concept of having a force majeure, specific force majeure clause exists in very few industries. Specifically in industries like, erection commissioning industries or industries which are having a long drawn contract, then you'll have a force majeure because you need to envisage for something which may or may not happen in the future. But otherwise, in a lot of the contracts, and specifically contracts within this industry, so, if you see charter party agreements, or if you see even the freight forwarding agreements, or where there are long-term contracts for storage, warehousing, etc., you may have a clause which is similar to a force majeure clause, but not exactly a force majeure, so not titled as a force majeure clause. And therefore it may have wordings like as an exception clause, that neither party shall be responsible if such a such situation happens, or that the party shall not be held responsible on account of this. And in those, you may at times see the wordings as lockout or lockdown, or you may have the wordings like, government diktat having been brought about in certain situation. Now, in those kind of agreements, you need to see that how is this playing around to determine whether the responsibility of one of the, or the obligation of one of the parties can be dispensed with because of the force majeure coming into play. Typically, a force majeure also explains the methodology in which the dispensation of the role or the obligation of the party is set out. So therefore, it becomes very critical that we examine that how it has been worded, and therefore whose obligation has been diluted or whose obligation is not required to be carried out. Now, before I conclude on this force majeure, I just want to bring out two other aspects. As I mentioned, that not every agreement may have a force majeure clause. And suppose if your agreement does not have, because say your agreement is only, say a consignment note or a bill of lading, it may not specifically have a force majeure clause, in which case, is there no remedy available? No, there is a remedy available, which is under the normal contractual, under the Contract Act, which is called the frustration clause. It is a frustration of contract, and it's a very old terminology, which is covered under section 56 of the Contract Act, which is a common provision which says that if a certain event happens which makes the obligation impossible to be carried out or impracticable, then the contract sends to be considered as frustrated. Now, what is important to note is that courts have held that the concept of frustration of a contract has a very high threshold. That means not in every scenario can you say that the contract has got frustrated. And to specifically answer your specific the query that, can someone use or abuse it? Say for example, and I'm just giving a layman's example, the industry may have much more complicated instances and situations. If there is a situation where certain trucks have been ordered for carrying certain goods or carriage from a factory, and because of lockdown the goods could not be loaded onto the trucks, the issue which comes up is that can the factory then take up that there is a frustration of the contract because of lockdown? People were asked to move, the employees were asked to move, and the goods could not be transported, or the trucks could not be loaded and the trucks could not be moved out. Now, in such a situation, if there is a provision for cancellation, and which typically exists in most of the documents in this industry, a cancellation provision exists, then you cannot bring about a frustration, because then the factory should have immediately pulled the trigger and asked for the cancellation of the requirement of the trucks, etc. And there would be cancellation charges. Then the frustration cannot come into play. So therefore, can there be an abuse? Yeah, there may be an attempt to abuse this provision, but is there a protection against that? Yes, there is a protection. Can I give you a clear recipe that one size fits all, it'll be applicable? It'll be very difficult to say that. And therefore, depending on situation to situation and the manner in which the force majeure clause has been drafted, we may need to identify and work out as to what will be a more effective situation. Now, there could be a third situation where one of our industry members may want to bring about the claim for frustration of a contract. As I mentioned, the bar for frustration is very high. Therefore, please check before you move into bringing about a claim for frustration of a contract, because if you bring about that and you fail to prove that there is a frustration of a contract, you also lose the opportunity or a chance of claiming damages. Therefore, what is the next evaluation? The evaluation is that, do I bring about a claim for frustration of a contract, or do I claim damages or compensation for a certain aspect? In which case, you may be better off at times to claim damages, considering the nature of contracts that we have in this industry, be it a charter party agreement, be it the carriage agreement, be it the storage warehousing agreement. All of these agreements are more effectively because they have the cancellation clause typically more often than not. The next point which I just want to highlight, and it'll just take a couple of more minutes, is that if you are going in for the damages clause or a compensation clause, please also understand that how do you structure the damages or compensation such that it does not tantamount to be a supply under the GST law or anything, because otherwise a part of your damages will have to be paid to the government as a supply consideration for a supply, and therefore anywhere in the range of 12 to 18% will be paid out to the government. So therefore, it is very important that the underlying contract by which the damages is being claimed or the compensation is being claimed has been structured, has been worded in a manner that it's a mutual consent and a mutual agreement between both the parties that have agreed to discharge such a compensation or such a damage, such a liability which is arising from that. This will help you in protecting from a GST perspective also. Otherwise, say if there is a total compensation of 100 which is identified, 18 out of 100 will have to be paid out to the government. So this would be another consequence. So all in all, I would like to say is that a force majeure clause is typically either termed as a force majeure or it may be in a different manner. But please, under each situation, determine as to how effective is this provision and how well you want to use it. Second, if there is not such a clause, you can go back onto the frustration clause under section 56 of the Contract Act. But if you are not going to be able to prove a clear frustration, which has a very high threshold that it is impossible to carry out an act, then I would suggest that you fall back and claim for damages or compensation, which may be much more effective, in which case then structure the transaction in a manner that it becomes mitigated from tax perspective and does not hamper you in that aspect. Thanks, Sanjay. Over to you again.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nishant. That's a very, very useful information. I will want to come back to you on a couple of other aspects of legality regarding contracts. Now moving into the question and answer session, first question is actually for Captain Deepak. We have been flooded by requests from the attendees today in the run-up to this webinar, looking for clarity on the stance of the shipping lines with regards to the DGS order about waiver of detention and demurrage. So can you please just explain the stance of the shipping lines and, why some companies feel as though they're still being charged and they feel it is, incorrectly so?
Yeah, a good question. In fact, earlier in the day, we were in a long discussion with DG Shipping when he held a webinar for all the service providers, including shipping lines. Let me just say that, the first lockdown that took place, the shipping lines were asked that please come forward and cooperate, give free time. So what the shipping lines did, that in fact, on the day of the order coming out, most of the shipping lines had already announced to their clients and given a circular stating very clearly that they will give the free time during the lockdown period from the 22nd of March up to the, when was that, 14th of April. The shipping lines went one step ahead and also discussed with DG Shipping, and DG Shipping put it in his order, whereby the shipping line said that notwithstanding the free time that is given between the 22nd of March up to the 14th of April, any free time that is already on the bills of lading, which has been agreed, will also add on to that free time which is already given during the lockdown. So what does it translate to? 22nd to the 14th, normal, say about 80-81% of the bills of lading that come into India for imports have about 14 days free time on them. So from 14th, you take another 14 days. So you've already reached the 29th of April. So effectively, I mean, you just got 4 days up to the 3rd of May, which frankly, doesn't mean anything. Okay. So what we did was that in the second lockdown, we gave this to each and every line and said, look, all the importers that are bringing cargo on your ships are your clients. Now you do everything in accordance to the DG Shipping circular, right? You do a good job of facilitating your importer as well as you possibly can. And so we left it to individual lines. And so the individual lines, some of them have, gone over and above what the order said. Some of them have not gone to that extent. But in general, what we see is that most of the lines have actually given a lot of time free. And like I mentioned right in the beginning, when you have given free time from 22nd to the 14th, and plus you have 14 days free time on your bills of lading, I mean, automatically you get to the 30th of April. I mean, frankly.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And any advice for any of the importers or exporters who are, at least they feel being thoroughly incorrectly charged? Like, what would you
I
recommend them to
think
do?
the advice that we have is that a lot of the importers, exporters, they are sending their issues to the Container Shipping Lines Association, right? And we are then passing it on to the shipping lines, the respective shipping lines also, to try and see what best they can do for that particular client. So basically, that's where the situation stands as of now. We do not know, and I cannot predict whether the lockdown 3.0, 4.0, 5.0, we don't know how long this lockdown is going to last. We do not know how long the shipping lines, right, will be in a situation where they have to forego money of giving free time to everybody.
Okay.
You see, because at the end of the day, it all translates to money. We don't get our container back. We don't have inventory for exports. We struggle. We are in a bit of a fix here.
Yeah, I understand completely. And I think that is an important point to communicate to all the attendees today that, when the shipping lines are not not utilizing the container on sea, that is basically losses that they have to accrue, because, so that should be something that everyone should keep in mind, as they fight. And I actually would have hoped that it would have been a lot more collaborative, but it seems as though people are fighting over this free time. But thank you so much, Captain. I want to move now back to Nishant. So this is a question that I would have liked to have touched upon in the first half, but I think now is as good as time as any to get to it. Going forward, Nishant, what advice would you give the logistics and exporter-importer community about how they should consider structuring both their domestic and international contracts, with respect to force majeure and other, like the LC clauses that they may look to, as they look to get into LCs. So what are some of the things that you think, from a lawyer's perspective should be on top of the mind for getting into new contracts right now? Nishant, you are still on mute, if I can.
Right. Thanks for reminding that. So the two things I would like to highlight very clearly is that going forward, one is from the force majeure clause. So if you see that the clause which is structured, it's typically quite industry specific. So if I was to say that normally in the construction industry, they have a very elaborate clause and therefore you just pick it up, I don't think it's going to serve the purpose. The purpose has to be that what are the situations which come about, and to overcome that situation such that it has to be facilitative from both perspectives. Unless it is facilitative both for the customer as well as the service provider, it is not going to get accepted in the agreement. The important point, however, is that how specific is it to bring about the eventuality of a force majeure happening will be more important. So for example, if you are talking about this demurrage issue, let's say, and somebody says that can I adopt force majeure in relation to non-payment of the demurrage. Now, if there was a clear provision within the force majeure clause itself, or as an exception clause, or within the that in case of such a eventuality over a period of these number of days, then certain days will be given free or at a 50% demurrage or something, then it could have been fallen back on, and that would have been a solution, which would have been a more effective solution rather than now getting into a circumstance where, while the customer is requiring a certain facilitation, obviously the industry is finding it difficult to provide that kind of facilitation. Now, we have certain instances. For example, Singapore has come out with a COVID-specific legislation, a temporary legislation, which says that all activities for this in-between period of a certain specific period has been suspended. Now, they've suspended it so as to basically avoid any kind of litigation, to say that during that period, if there were any obligations from one of the parties and that obligation could not be satisfied, that obligation does not result to failure for satisfaction obligation which falls within that period, and therefore this issue can be resolved. Now, India has as yet not come out with any such legislation. From a Finance Act perspective, they have come out with a force majeure definition, and they've said that it's a calamity, natural calamity, etc. That is, but it is very specific to compliances under the various acts, under the income tax or under the GST, etc. etc. It's not for a contractual transaction. Whether India comes out with that will have to be seen in future. That is one part. The second part, as you mentioned, that going forward from an LC perspective. Now, on LC, we've recently had a Bombay High Court judgment where the Bombay High Court has said that, so here the Indian importer had requested the bank not to act upon the LC so as to pay to the supplier because they could not clear the goods. The Bombay High Court has stepped in to say that the contractual arrangement between the supplier and the Indian importer is different from the contractual arrangement between the Indian importer and the bank under which the LC has been opened. Now, would it be effective going forward that there is a cross-reference between the importer-exporter agreement and the agreement or the LC agreement which the importer has with the bankers? That may be facilitative, because this kind of situation, which may term the importer-exporter agreement to be frustrated, will not come to the facilitation of the importer when it is as regards the LC. So would it make sense to then connect both or have a cross-referencing? Yeah, it may facilitate. So there are such factual points which may need to be examined on a situation to situation.
Okay, and in order to, get through some of these nuances, is there any sort of easily available resource for both logistics providers as well as the EXIM community to look at and, help construct these contracts? Or is it just like so case to case that they always have to approach a specialist to get it done?
As I mentioned that, it is quite industry specific. It is also scope specific. So within the industry, you may create a clause or a certain provision in which may be used by everybody in the industry. And to bring about certain amount of standardization at times is much more facilitative, because if it was to go into some sort of a litigation, then a norm is fixed that, everybody acts in that manner because the wordings of every agreement is similar. So even in the shipping industry, for example, you have the BIMCO templates and things. So there is a lot of standardization in almost every industry now, but it always helps to have a standardization. Though it may not be possible to say that, it's a specific clause which should be applied in all circumstances.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. Mr. Bal Singh, I actually have a question from the audience from Mr. Surajit Sarkar. And the question is, what measures can be taken to motivate drivers for joining immediately, especially for interstate movements? And, how has the government been responding to some of the initiatives that you have put forward to them? Are they receptive, and are we likely to see a rollout so that, this entire problem can be eased out?
Mr. Singh, you have to unmute. Oh, unmute me.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Now we can.
So as already I stated that the fear factor is the most important factor which has been in the driver fraternity, and amongst the co-worker also who have been daily interacting with them. We had already suggested that some insurance provisions should be made by the government, otherwise which the government is telling that it is under consideration. And if not that, ultimately we have to make some provision for their health, for giving them some insurance protection. And secondly is that they should be feel secured while traveling all across the country for the interstate movement. And they should be frequently checked at the loading point, at the unloading point, the vehicle should be sanitized, and they should be provided with an food and route, because all that dhabas, eateries, even though the permission has been granted, limited permission has been granted, but some provisions should be made. And we are also from our side, we are awareing them about the do and do nots, what to do, what not to do, how to be and maintain the hygiene level. We are providing them with the mask, hand sanitizer, soaps, and but the government has to be come forward as a confidence building exercise. They are the toll plaza all across the country, 527 toll plaza. It is not possible to do on the every toll plaza, but every 100 kilometer, 150 kilometer, 2 kilometer, 200 kilometer, some arrangement in a long term should be given to them there, where they should have the parking facilities, where they should avail the basic amenities, and where they should get the medical treatment. The vehicle should get sanitized. And as I already stated that already this industry is overburdened with its operational cost, and industry will be not want to be get more overburdened with this, and government should come out with the package for this industry. We have given the rescue package also, and if 2 lakh of crore is being spent to fight this virus, why not some of the small amount of 2,200 crore be spent upon this basic amenities, facilities for the drivers. If whatever we are speaking, if the drivers are not there, we will not able to move an inch also. They are the backbone. They will be moving the material. We have the material ready, we have the purchaser ready, but if the driver is not there, and what we forces is that there should be acute shortage of the driver in the coming days, because already the industry is facing around 20%, 22% driver shortage before the COVID. And since most of the driver had left, and the driver who are already there, they may also, first thing they will do, that they will move to their native places, and bringing them will be a very daunting task. Confidence building measures have to be given, and let us see how the things unfold. It will be a day-to-day challenges for us to face, and we are trying our level best. But from the government side, we hope that some initiative should be taken. They are also the frontline warrior, and they should be recognized for their services. But that things are not coming forward. Insurance schemes or the basic amenities, subsidized food. Yesterday we suggested to our minister that 23 checkposts are there. You have the shift thali of 5 rupees, 10 rupees. Why not you provide at the checkpost also? Why not you provide with the basic amenities of bathing? Why not you provide them some do and do nots, what to do? Why not to provide with the helpline number? Because the harassment is and route is frequent stop over the vehicle is the biggest harassment for them. And you see the physical intervention. And in logistic, what we are seeing that checkposts are there, toll nakas are there, fizzling handling is much more as compared to your industry, where there is a digital movement is there, but we are not so much organized. So everywhere on the right from the petrol pump to the toll plaza, the precautions should be taken of hand sanitization before the transaction, after the transaction, and some insurance, medical health. All we have to look after them, so that this all fear are gone and they should come and join their duties. Back to you, Sanjay, please.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. And would you have any, what in your opinion has been the response rate from the government? So we are, thank you for sharing that you are talking to them, but is there a very positive response? Are we likely to see them come forward and implement some of the initiatives that you have suggested? So we're just trying to understand their receptiveness.
We have been told that they are under consideration, but what we feel that now we are also losing our patience. The driver fraternity, the co-worker are losing their patience, and they are feeling insecure that we are not treated like a human being, so we are being neglected. This factor is also maybe the one of the reason. And whatever the government want from this forum, we suggest that whatever the government form, it should become immediately and should be implemented in its true letter and spirit to maintain the supply chain. Otherwise, the situation will be very, 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 very grim for us in a days ahead.
Yeah. No, I understand. I think all of the problems that we have discussed, basically they all start at this driver shortage. So
Yes.
if this shortage is cleared, I think there will be a big wave across the supply chain when normalization across every different aspect should begin to happen. But if the driver shortage cannot be solved soon, I think we are looking for some very tough times ahead, for both the importers, exporters, as well as all logistics providers. So with that, unfortunately, we've run out of time. I just want to pause very quickly. Mr. Manabji, if you could just let me know if Mr. Mastan has been able to join. So for the benefit of our audience, Mr. Mastan is the chairman of logistics for FICCI. Yes, Mr. Manabji.
No, I mean, he's got, his call got a little longer, so he's not with us.
No problem. So I'll just conclude this webinar by saying, thank you firstly to all of the panelists. You have been very kind to join us and share your insights. We really appreciate it. A special thank you to FICCI as well, to Mr. Majumdar as well as Mr. Mastan for helping to ideate this and, bring the entire webinar together. And lastly, thank you to the attendees of the webinar. We hope that, the knowledge shared right now is useful. We hope to get an idea of how to move forward, and unfortunately the situation does not look like it is going to improve in a big way, especially until the driver shortage is resolved. But we still hope that this session has proved useful for you. I mean, knowledge is power, so understanding the situation will also help in planning your way forward. With that, I conclude this webinar, and thank you all once again for joining.
All the distinguished panelists, thank you so much. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.